Some battles are fought not with weapons, but with the will to survive, and when everything is lost, it's the strength to rebuild that becomes the truest form of victory. The gunshot shattered the suburban tranquility, like thunder tearing through a cloudless sky. In one moment, 12-year-old Sophia Hayes was strolling with her German shepherd, Max, down the sunlit sidewalk of Oid Drive. In the next, her world disintegrated into chaos. "Max!" she screamed. Her voice ripped through the air, raw and agonizing, as the majestic dog collapsed onto the pavement. Blood blossomed across his silver-tipped coat, spreading like wildfire. Sophia fell to her knees, her small hands desperately pressing against the wound, her dark eyes wide with disbelief and terror. Officer Miller stood motionless, his service weapon still raised, a thin tendril of smoke rising from the barrel. His partner, Officer Calloway, placed a firm hand on the sobbing child's shoulder. "The dog was aggressive," he said flatly, dismissing her heartbroken pleas. Neither officer noticed the elderly woman across the street, already on her porch, and dialing a number that would travel halfway across the world, landing in a secure location where Commander Michael Hayes, the most lethal operative in Delta Force history, would learn of the tragedy that would soon ignite their downfall. Sophia Hayes knew grief all too well for a child of her age. 2 years ago, cancer had stolen her mother, Eleanor, leaving a hollow void in their family. A void that seemed impossible to fill. Once a bright student with a love for astronomy and a collection of colorful notebooks filled with her observations of the night sky, Sophia had withdrawn into silence after her mother's death. Her once vibrant brown eyes, so much like Eleanor's, had lost their spark, and her laughter, once so infectious, became nothing but a distant echo. The Hayes family had only recently moved to Oid, an affluent suburb primarily occupied by white families. Their stately colonial home, with its perfectly manicured lawn and wraparound porch, had been Eleanor's dream, a dream she would never live to see fulfilled. Sophia navigated this new world with the quiet vigilance of a child who knew, even at such a young age, that her presence here was regarded as something of an anomaly. Commander Michael Hayes wore his elite military status like a hidden armor. At 38, he had served in the deadliest corners of the world, earning his place as one of Delta Force's most decorated operatives. His missions were classified, his medals secured in a safe rather than on display. At 6 feet 2 inches, with broad shoulders and a body honed by years of training, Michael moved with the quiet confidence of someone who understood just how dangerous he could be. Despite his formidable presence, his voice remained soft when speaking to his daughter, and his hands, capable of incredible violence when necessary, were impossibly gentle when brushing Sophia's hair. Widowhood and single parenthood had etched new lines into his face. The weight of his extended deployments, each one pulling him farther from Sophia, had carved new depths of exhaustion into him, but he believed in the work he did, defending his country. Max had been his gift to Sophia after Eleanor's funeral, a silver-tipped German shepherd with intelligent eyes and undying loyalty. Trained first as a military service dog before being reassigned as a companion animal, Max understood commands in 4 languages and had an uncanny ability to sense Sophia's nightmares before they fully formed. Every night he slept at the foot of her bed, a warm, protective presence in Michael's absence. For Sophia, Max became the bridge between a life before and after her mother's death. When words failed her, Max's steady presence offered something therapy could never reach: unconditional love, security, and a sense of safety in a world that had proven itself tragically unpredictable. In Max's company, Sophia had slowly begun to heal, beginning to speak again, to smile, to exist beyond the grief that had once consumed her. The late September afternoon bathed Oak Ridge in a soft golden glow as Sophia clipped Max's leash to his collar. Michael had been deployed for 3 weeks now, one of his shorter missions as he had promised, and their daily walks had become Sophia's anchor, a ritual that kept her tethered to the rhythms of everyday life while her father was far away. Today, Sophia wore her NASA t-shirt, a gift from her father, who understood her dreams of one day working in mission control. Max stood calmly by her side as she double-checked his collar, his tail sweeping gentle arcs across the hardwood floor. "We'll be back before dinner, Aunt Jasmine," Sophia called. Her aunt, absorbed in legal briefs at the kitchen table, looked up and smiled. Jasmine had been staying with Sophia during Michael's deployments. Her apartment just 20 minutes away. "Stay on the main path," Jasmine reminded her, "and be back before 5. I'm making your favorite pasta." Outside, the neighborhood gleamed with privilege. Meticulously manicured lawns, luxury vehicles parked in circular driveways, children's toys more expensive than some people's rent. The Hayes house, while comfortable, was modest by Oid standards. Sophia had already learned which neighbors smiled at her and which ones turned their eyes away, which houses Max should avoid, and which elderly residents appreciated his dignified presence. Mrs. Whitman, 82 and as sharp as ever, waved from her porch. "Looking handsome today, Max," she called. Sophia waved back, always grateful for how the elderly woman acknowledged Max first, understanding instinctively that the dog was Sophia's bridge to communication. They continued their usual route past the community park, where children younger than Sophia played under the watchful eyes of nannies. Max walked precisely at Sophia's left side, matching her stride, occasionally glancing up to check her expression. His steady presence kept the whispered comments and curious stares at bay. People were less likely to approach a child accompanied by a large German shepherd, even one as well-behaved as Max. At the 4-mile marker of their walk, a police cruiser rolled slowly alongside them. Sophia noticed instantly her father had taught her situational awareness from an early age. She kept walking, her pace unbroken, Max's leash slack in her hand. The cruiser passed them before pulling over abruptly. 2 officers emerged, and Sophia felt the first prickle of unease. "Afternoon," said the older officer, his name badge reading Calloway. "You live around here?" His tone was casual, but his eyes were calculating, assessing. "Yes, sir," Sophia answered, her voice soft but clear. Michael had taught her to be respectful of authority, but also to stand her ground. "On Riverside Drive. My father and I moved here in June." Officer Calloway exchanged a glance with his partner, Officer Miller, a younger man with close-cropped hair and thin lips. "Your father home right now?" "He's away on business," Sophia replied, carefully omitting any details of Michael's deployment, as she'd been instructed. "My aunt is staying with me." Miller stepped closer, his eyes narrowing as he took in Max, who stood still and calm at Sophia's side. "That's a big dog for a little girl. You sure you can control him?" "Max is trained, sir. He won't cause any trouble." Sophia's fingers tightened ever so slightly on the leash, not out of concern for Max, but from the tension she could feel mounting in the air. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in the area," Calloway said, his hand resting casually near his holster. "You haven't seen anything unusual around here, have you?" "No, sir." Sophia took a small step backward, and Max mirrored her, synchronized movements born from years of being together. "What's your name, kid?" Miller's voice sharpened. "Sophia Hayes." She held his gaze despite the growing unease in her chest. "My father is Commander Michael Hayes." Neither officer responded to the mention of her father's military rank. "Commander of what?" Miller asked, his tone dripping with skepticism. "He's in the army, sir. Special forces." Sophia didn't elaborate further. Knowing her father's specific role wasn't for casual conversation. Calloway stepped closer. "You got any ID on you, Miss Hayes?" Sophia shook her head. "I'm 12, sir. I don't carry ID when I'm walking my dog." Miller scoffed. "Convenient." He moved closer, and for the first time, Max let out a low, rumbling sound. Not a growl, but a warning. "Control your dog," Miller snapped, his hand drifting toward his weapon. "He is controlled," Sophia replied, her voice rising with the first tremor of fear. "He's just responding to your tone. If you step back, he'll calm down." Instead of stepping back, Miller took another step forward. "I said, control your animal." Max didn't lunge, didn't show his teeth, didn't even bark. He simply shifted slightly, positioning himself in front of Sophia, a protective stance any trained handler would recognize as defensive, not aggressive. "He's attacking!" Miller shouted, drawing his weapon in one swift motion. "No!" Sophia's scream ripped through the air as she tried to pull Max back, but everything unfolded too quickly. The gunshot split the afternoon silence. Max yelped once, a sound Sophia had never heard from him before, and collapsed, blood immediately darkening his silver-grey coat. Sophia dropped to her knees beside him, her small hands pressing against the wound, her voice cracking as she begged, "Max, no! Please, Max, stay with me." Blood seeped between her fingers as Max's intelligent eyes found hers, confusion and pain reflecting in them. Officer Calloway stood back, watching with a detached, almost clinical air. "The dog was aggressive, Miller. He was going to attack," Miller insisted, holstering his weapon. "You saw it." "Well?" Sophia looked up at him through tears, her voice trembling with a combination of rage and grief. "He wasn't attacking. He was protecting me. You scared him." "Step away from the animal, miss," Calloway ordered, reaching for her arm. Sophia jerked away. "Don't touch me! Help him, please! You have to help him!" Across the street, Mrs. Whitman had witnessed everything. Her hands, stiff with arthritis, fumbled for her phone, but her voice was sharp and unwavering as she dialed 911. "Two police officers just shot a little girl's dog without provocation. The dog wasn't attacking. I saw the whole thing." As Sophia cradled Max's head in her lap, his breathing became shallow, each exhale more labored. His tail thumped once against the pavement, a final, feeble attempt to comfort her, and then stilled. The light in his eyes faded as Sophia's world collapsed into a singularity of grief. "He's dead," she whispered, her voice empty with disbelief. "You killed him." She looked up at the officers, her young face twisted by a pain no child should ever bear. "My father will make you pay for this." Miller's laugh was short and dismissive. "Is that a threat, little girl?" "No," Sophia said, her tears falling onto Max's lifeless body. "It's a promise. Stand up." Officer Calloway's voice cut through Sophia's grief like a blade. When she didn't move, still cradling Max's head in her lap, he reached down and roughly yanked her to her feet. Blood, Max's blood, stained her NASA t-shirt and jeans, smearing across her hands and forearms. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I can't leave him here. Please." Miller stepped forward, his stance aggressive. "You're coming with us to the station to sort this out." Mrs. Whitman had descended from her porch and now approached, her frail form trembling with indignation. "You can't take that child without a parent or guardian present. Her dog was not attacking anyone. I saw everything." "Ma'am, this is police business," Calloway said dismissively. "Please return to your residence." "I've already called 911, Mrs. Whitman insisted, her cell phone clutched tightly in her weathered hand. "And I've taken video. That dog was not aggressive." Miller's face turned crimson. "Interfering with police business is a crime, ma'am. So is shooting a child's dog without cause," she shot back, standing her ground despite her advanced age. "But I'm not leaving this child alone with you." More neighbors had gathered, drawn by the gunshot and the scene unfolding. Several had their phones out, recording the confrontation. Sophia stood motionless, shock settling over her like a heavy blanket. Her eyes never left Max's lifeless form, blood staining the pavement beneath him. "Fine," Calloway muttered, seeing the growing crowd. "We're taking her to the station. You can follow if you want." He turned to Sophia, his voice now falsely gentle, knowing they had witnesses. "Come on, kid, we need to get this sorted out." "I'm not leaving Max," Sophia said, her voice flat and empty. The shock was setting in fully now, a defense mechanism as her body struggled to cope with the enormity of what had just transpired. "Animal control will handle the dog," Miller said impatiently. "Let's go." Mrs. Whitman stepped closer to Sophia, wrapping a protective arm around her shoulders. "We'll call her aunt," she said, her tone firm. "Her aunt is home." "We'll contact her from the station," Calloway insisted, taking hold of Sophia's arm and guiding her toward the patrol car. "Protocol." In a daze, Sophia allowed herself to be led away from Max, her eyes lingering on his body, until it was no longer in view. Inside the police cruiser, the world seemed to blur at the edges. The officers' voices sounded distant, muffled, as if coming through water. She answered their questions mechanically, offering Aunt Jasmine's phone number and address when asked, but otherwise retreating deep inside herself, into a place where the pain couldn't reach her. At the station, they placed her in a small, sterile room with bare walls and a table bolted to the floor. An officer she didn't recognize brought her a paper cup of water that she didn't touch. Time stretched, distorted. She stared at Max's blood drying on her hands, unwilling to wash it away. It was all she had left of him. The door burst open nearly 2 hours later, and Aunt Jasmine stormed in, a hurricane of fury barely contained beneath her professional composure. At 35, Jasmine Hayes had built a reputation as one of the city's most formidable civil rights attorneys, and that reputation preceded her. Sophia! Jasmine crossed the room in 3 quick strides. Enfolding her niece in her arms, she pulled back to examine her, horror flashing across her features at the sight of the blood-stained clothes. "Are you hurt? Did they hurt you?" Sophia shook her head, unable to form the words. Jasmine turned toward the officers who had followed her into the room. "You held a minor for nearly 2 hours without notifying her guardian. You subjected her to questioning without proper representation. The dog you shot was a registered service animal, trained specifically to provide emotional support for a child who lost her mother to cancer." "The dog was aggressive," Miller started. "Save it!" Jasmine snapped, her voice icy with fury. "I've already reviewed video footage from 3 different neighbors. That animal was not aggressive, and you know it." She quickly gathered Sophia's belongings. "We're leaving, and be advised, this is far from over." As they walked through the station, Sophia's vacant gaze caught the attention of a young officer standing by the front desk. His name badge read Parker. Unlike the others, his eyes held something like shame as he watched them pass. The ride home was silent. Sophia stared out the window, her body physically present, but her mind miles away. When they arrived home, Jasmine gently guided her to the bathroom. "Let's get you cleaned up, sweetheart," she said softly. Sophia looked down at her stained hands. "If I wash it away," she whispered, "it's like admitting he's really gone." Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, Sophia." She knelt before her niece. "Max will always be with you. Nothing can wash away what he meant to you." Later, after a shower she didn't remember taking and wearing clean clothes that brought no comfort, Sophia sat on her bed, staring at Max's empty dog bed in the corner of the room. Jasmine sat beside her, making calls, her voice alternating between professional composure and barely contained rage as she spoke with legal colleagues, animal rights advocates, police oversight committees, and, through proper military channels, attempting to reach Michael. That night, the nightmares began. Sophia woke screaming, reaching for Max, who had always been there to comfort her. Jasmine held her instead, but it wasn't the same. The nightmares came again and again. The sound of the gunshot, Max falling, the blood seeping through her fingers as his life slipped away. 3 days later, Michael Hayes stepped off a military transport plane, his face carved from granite. He had been extracted from his mission the moment Jasmine's message reached his commanding officers, the urgency clear even through official channels. He hadn't spoken more than necessary during the journey home, his mind consumed by a single purpose, reaching his daughter. When he walked through the door of their home, Sophia was sitting motionless on the living room couch, staring blankly ahead. She hadn't spoken a word since leaving the police station. The child psychologist Jasmine had called in had diagnosed acute traumatic stress and recommended immediate therapy. "Sophia," Michael said softly. She turned, and when she saw him, something broke open in her face. She launched herself into his arms with a raw, wounded sound that was more animal than human. Michael lifted her easily, holding her tightly against his chest as she sobbed for the first time since Max had died. "I couldn't save him, Daddy," she choked out between sobs. "I tried. I had my hands on the wound, like you taught me, but I couldn't stop the bleeding." Michael's eyes met Jasmine's over Sophia's head, and his sister saw something there that made her blood run cold. A calm, calculated fury that she recognized from their childhood. It was the look he'd had the night he'd put 3 neighborhood boys in the hospital for attacking her when she was 14. "I shouldn't have let go of the leash," Sophia continued, her words tumbling out now that the dam had broken. "Maybe if I hadn't pulled back, this wasn't your fault," Michael said, his voice gentle with her even as rage built behind his eyes. "Max did exactly what he was supposed to do. He protected you. The policeman said Max was attacking, but he wasn't, Daddy. He was just standing in front of me." Michael carried her to the couch, sitting with her still in his arms. "I know, baby. I believe you." That night, after Sophia had finally fallen into an exhausted sleep, Michael sat in the darkened kitchen with Jasmine. His sister pushed a thick folder across the table to him. Internal affairs cleared them both, she said without preamble. Justified use of force. They're claiming the dog lunged. Michael's expression didn't change. The videos are apparently inconclusive, Jasmine added, her voice bitter with the knowledge of too many similar cases. The system protects its own. I'm filing a civil suit. But that won't be enough, Michael finished. He stood and walked to the window, staring out into the night. My daughter can't sleep. She can't speak. That dog saved her life after Eleanor died, and these men took him from her without consequence. He turned back to Jasmine, his decision already made. The system has failed my daughter. I won't. Michael Hayes sat in his study, reviewing the internal investigation report Jasmine had obtained through her legal channels. The official narrative was clean, concise, and completely fabricated. Officers responded to reports of suspicious activity. Upon approaching the subject, the canine displayed aggressive behavior and lunged at Officer Miller, who discharged his weapon in self-defense. Convenient, sanitized, a lie wrapped in bureaucratic language designed to absolve the department of any wrongdoing. Through the partially open door, Michael could see Sophia sitting motionless on the living room floor, her homework untouched beside her. She had resumed school at Jasmine's insistence, but the light had yet to return to her eyes. Her therapist, Dr. Sarah Bennett, worked tirelessly with Sophia, but the vibrant, curious child who once filled notebooks with star charts and endless questions now moved through her days like a ghost. The sight of his daughter, hollowed and diminished, fueled the cold rage that had settled into Michael's bones. He had been trained to channel emotion into tactical advantage, to compartmentalize feelings that could compromise mission objectives. But this was different. This was Sophia. "There's something else you should see," Jasmine said, entering the study with another folder. "I pulled the personnel files on both officers." She spread several documents across the desk. Calloway has 17 complaints in his file over the past 6 years. Excessive force, racial profiling, illegal search and seizure. Miller has 9, most filed after he became Calloway's partner 3 years ago. Not a single one resulted in disciplinary action. Michael examined the documents, noting the patterns. The complaints are predominantly from people of color in a jurisdiction that's 80% white, Jasmine confirmed. The police chief, the mayor, and the district attorney are all college buddies. The system is designed to protect them, not to hold them accountable. And now they've turned their attention to our neighborhood, Michael said, connecting the dots. The reports of suspicious activity they claim to be investigating? Exactly. There weren't any. I checked dispatch records. The call never happened. They saw a black child in an affluent white neighborhood and decided she didn't belong there. Jasmine's voice was tight with controlled anger. "This is what I fight every day in court, Michael. The casual, systemic racism that puts our people at risk just for existing in spaces others think we don't belong." Michael nodded, his expression unreadable. "I understand your fight, Jazz. I respect it. But I can't wait for the system to correct itself. Not while Sophia wakes up screaming every night." "What are you planning?" Jasmine asked, though the resignation in her voice suggested she already knew. Michael didn't answer directly. "I need you to continue with the civil suit. Follow every proper channel. Document everything. Be the voice of reason and legal rectitude." "While you do what exactly?" "While I ensure that these men never hurt another child." Jasmine closed her eyes briefly. "Michael, I can't be part of anything illegal. I would never ask you to be." He gathered the papers, organizing them methodically. "But I need to know you'll be there for Sophia. If things get complicated, you know I will." Jasmine hesitated, then added, "Just remember, Sophia needs her father more than she needs vengeance." Michael looked past her to where his daughter sat, still and silent, in the living room. "What she needs is justice, and since no one else seems willing to provide it, that responsibility falls to me." His military training had prepared him for patient, methodical intelligence gathering. He established the officers' patterns, their patrol routes, preferred lunch spots, off-duty haunts. Calloway lived in a modest ranch-style house with his wife and teenage son. Miller, divorced twice, occupied a sparsely furnished apartment and spent most evenings at O'Mal's pub. Both men operated with the casual confidence of those who had never faced consequences for their actions. Michael documented everything. He installed discreet cameras around his property, preparing for the inevitable moment when the officers would return. He knew men like Calloway and Miller couldn't resist the urge to intimidate, to reassert their dominance. They would come, and when they did, he would be ready. A week into his surveillance, Michael's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Hayes," he answered, his voice neutral. "Commander Hayes?" The male voice on the other end was hesitant, young. "This is Officer Thomas Parker. I was there the day your daughter's dog was shot." Michael's grip tightened on the phone. "What do you want, Officer Parker?" "To talk. In person." Parker's voice dropped lower. "What happened to your daughter? It wasn't right. The report, it's not what actually happened. I didn't say anything then, and I've been having trouble living with myself. Why tell me this? Why not report it through proper channels?" Parker's laugh was bitter. "I tried. My sergeant told me to remember where my loyalty should lie if I wanted to keep my job." Michael considered the possibilities. A trap, a genuine crisis of conscience, a test. 4 o'clock. The coffee shop on Marlin Street, come alone and in civilian clothes. At 4 o'clock, Michael sat at a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. Officer Parker entered precisely on time, dressed in jeans and a button-down shirt, looking younger out of uniform. He spotted Michael immediately, recognition flickering across his face. Parker had clearly done his homework. There weren't many publicly available photos of Michael from his classified career. "Commander Hayes," Parker said, sliding into the seat across from him. His eyes were red-rimmed, his posture tense. Michael studied him. "You're taking a significant risk, Officer Parker." "I know." Parker's hands fidgeted with a paper napkin. "But I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see your daughter's face when that dog went down. I see the way Calloway and Miller treated her afterward. Tell me what really happened." Parker's account matched the neighbors' videos, but added crucial details. There had been no call about suspicious activity. Calloway had spotted Sophia and commented, "Another one moving in," before pulling over. Max had never lunged, never bared his teeth. The dog had simply shifted his weight, positioning himself between Sophia and Miller, a protective stance, not an aggressive one. "Miller has a thing about big dogs," Parker explained. "Got bit pretty bad as a rookie. But this wasn't about fear. He wasn't afraid, but he was angry," Michael supplied. "That a black child had the audacity to walk a powerful dog in a white neighborhood." Parker nodded miserably. "After, at the station, I tried to talk to my sergeant. He shut me down, said I needed to learn how things worked. The next day, the report was filed. Clean shoot, case closed." "And you signed off on it?" "Yeah." Parker couldn't meet Michael's eyes. "I did." Michael leaned forward. "Why come to me now?" "Because I saw your daughter's face in the station. I saw what it did to her. And then I found out about Max, that he was specially trained, that she lost her mother." Parker finally looked up. "I became a cop to help people, not to terrorize children and shoot their dogs." "What are you offering, Officer Parker?" "Information. And when the time comes, testimony. I'll go on record about what really happened." Michael studied the young officer. "You're willing to throw away your career?" "What career?" Parker's laugh was hollow. "Being complicit in this kind of thing. That's not why I took the oath." As Parker spoke, Michael's phone buzzed with a text from Jasmine. "Call me. Important development." After Parker left, Michael called his sister. "What's going on?" "I just got off the phone with the district attorney's office," Jasmine said, her voice tight with controlled rage. "They're not pursuing charges against the officers. Insufficient evidence to contradict the officer's account of events." "We have multiple videos," Michael said evenly. "None that capture the exact moment Miller claims Max lunged. And apparently, the word of 3 police officers outweighs the testimony of an old woman and a traumatized child." The frustration in Jasmine's voice was palpable. "I'm not giving up on the civil case, but criminal charges are off the table." "I see." Michael ended the call, his decision crystallizing. The legal system had failed, as he'd known it would. The time for observation was over. That evening, Michael watched from his parked car as Officer Calloway exited O'Mal's pub alone. Miller had left an hour earlier, visibly intoxicated despite being scheduled for patrol the following morning. Calloway had stayed, nursing a single beer while watching the baseball game on the bar's television. Now he walked with the confident swagger of a man who believed himself untouchable, keys twirling around his finger as he headed for his car in the dimly lit lot behind the building. Michael moved silently, intercepting Calloway just as he reached for his car door. "Officer Calloway!" Calloway turned, startled, but quickly recovered. Recognition dawned in his eyes. "You're the kid's father, Commander Hayes?" "Yes." Calloway's posture shifted, becoming defensive. His hand drifted toward his hip, where his off-duty weapon would be holstered. "This is harassment, you know. I could arrest you right now." "You could try," Michael replied, his voice deadly calm. "But then We'd have to see which one of us is better trained. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Calloway's face. What do you want? I want you to understand something. Michael stepped closer, invading the officer's personal space. My daughter hasn't spoken above a whisper since you and your partner killed her dog, Michael said, his voice cold and quiet. She's 12 years old, and she's already learned that the people who are supposed to protect her will harm her without consequence. Look, that dog was aggressive. Michael moved with frightening speed, his fists slamming into Calloway's solar plexus. The officer doubled over, gasping for breath, too shocked to reach for his weapon. Michael grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the car. Max was a trained service animal who saved my daughter's life after her mother died, Michael said, his tone still calm despite the violence of his actions. He was not aggressive. He was protective. There's a difference, one that any competent officer should recognize. Calloway struggled, but Michael had been trained by the best. He pinned the officer against the vehicle with minimal effort. You have a choice to make, Calloway. You can either come clean about what really happened, or you can experience firsthand what it feels like to be genuinely afraid for your life. You're threatening a police officer, Calloway gasped. That's a felony. No, Michael corrected him. I'm promising a corrupt man that his actions have consequences. The badge doesn't make you immune. He released Calloway and stepped back. The officer slumped against the car, his face contorted with a mix of fear and rage. You're dead, Hayes. You don't know who you're messing with. Actually, I do, Michael replied. A bully with a badge who's never faced a fair fight. He straightened his jacket. Consider this a warning. Stay away from my daughter. Stay away from my home. And start considering a career change because one way or another you and Miller are finished in this town. As Michael walked away, Calloway called after him. You think you're untouchable because you're some kind of military hotshot. The system works differently here. We protect our own. Michael paused, looked back. So do I, Officer Calloway. So do I. The confrontation had precisely the effect Michael anticipated. Within days, Miller became jumpy on patrol, constantly looking over his shoulder. Calloway, attempting to mask his unease, became more aggressive during stops, as if trying to prove he wasn't intimidated. Michael continued his surveillance, documenting the escalating pattern of misconduct. Officer Parker provided internal records showing that complaints against both men had increased since Max's shooting. 2 weeks after confronting Calloway, Michael received a call from Dr. Bennett, Sophia's therapist. Commander Hayes, I'm concerned about Sophia's progress, she said. She's developed an intense fear of police officers and loud noises. She's showing symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. What can I do? Michael asked, watching through the window, as Sophia sat on the porch swing, staring at the spot in the yard where Max used to lie in the sun. She needs stability and security right now, Dr. Bennett said gently, and some way to process her grief for Max. Have you considered getting another dog? It's too soon, Michael said firmly. She's not ready. Perhaps, Dr. Bennett conceded, but she needs to know it's possible to love again without betraying Max's memory. Think about it. After ending the call, Michael joined Sophia on the porch. They sat in companionable silence for several minutes before she spoke, her voice barely audible. Are you going to hurt those policemen, Daddy? Michael studied her face, surprised by the question. Why do you ask that? Because I know how you get when somebody hurts people you love. Her eyes, so like her mother's, were serious beyond her years. I heard you talking to Aunt Jasmine. Michael chose his words carefully. I want those men to understand the consequences of their actions. I want them to face justice. But what if hurting them doesn't make it better? Sophia asked. What if it just makes more hurt in the world? Her question pierced through the cold calculation that had driven him since his return. What do you think would make it better, Sophia? She was quiet for a long moment, thinking. I think Max would want us to be okay. He wouldn't want us to be sad forever, or to do bad things because we're angry. She leaned against her father's arm. I miss him so much, Daddy. It hurts all the time. Michael wrapped his arm around her small shoulders. I know, baby. I miss him too. That night, after Sophia was asleep, Michael reviewed his intelligence on Calloway and Miller. The pattern was clear. Both officers had escalated their behavior since Max's shooting, as if emboldened by their ability to escape consequences. According to Parker, Calloway had even been heard boasting, "That's how you handle these people when they try to move into our neighborhoods. Show them who's in charge." Michael's phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. They're planning something tomorrow. Watch your daughter. Michael didn't sleep that night. Parker's warning echoed in his mind as he methodically checked and rechecked the security system he had installed throughout the house. Cameras monitored every approach. Motion sensors guarded the perimeter. Reinforced locks secured every entry point. These precautions weren't paranoia, they were the calculated response of a man who understood exactly what his adversaries were capable of. By dawn, he had formulated his plan, one that would require perfect timing and flawless execution. "You're not going to school today," he told Sophia over breakfast, keeping his tone casual despite the gravity of his decision. "How about we take a day trip instead? There's a science museum in the next county," he added. "They've got a new planetarium exhibit." Sophia looked up from her untouched cereal, surprise flickering across her face. "But Dr. Bennett said I should maintain my routine." "Sometimes it's good to break routine," Michael replied, his eyes constantly scanning the windows, the street beyond. "Besides, I think your mother would have loved to see this exhibit with you." The mention of Eleanor was deliberate, a gentle reminder of the bonds that still tethered them to love even through grief. Sophia nodded slowly, and for a moment, Michael caught a glimpse of the child she used to be, curious, eager to explore the universe. "Will Aunt Jasmine come too?" "She has court today," he answered, already texting his sister a coded message they'd established years ago. "Taking S to see the stars. House might need attention while we're gone. Jasmine would understand. Take Sophia to safety. Anticipate trouble at the house." They left through the back door, avoiding the main street where a patrol car had already made 2 slow passes that morning. Michael drove circuitously, ensuring they weren't followed. Before delivering Sophia to the home of one of Jasmine's trusted colleagues outside the city limits. Only after his daughter was safely settled did Michael return to put the second phase of his plan into motion. The house sat empty, seemingly vulnerable. Michael positioned himself in the blind spot of the property, the one area not visible from the street or neighboring homes. Then he waited. His patience was honed by countless missions where the difference between success and failure was measured in seconds. At 2:17 p.m., precisely when Parker had indicated, a cruiser rolled slowly past the Hayes residence. Michael watched through high-powered binoculars as Miller pointed toward the house, saying something to Calloway. The cruiser continued down the street, turned the corner, and disappeared. 15 minutes later, it returned, this time pulling into the driveway next door. Both officers exited the vehicle, approaching Miss Whitman's house with deliberate casualness. Michael's jaw tightened as he watched them speak with his elderly neighbor. He couldn't hear the conversation, but Mrs. Whitman's body language told him everything he needed to know. Arms crossed, chin raised, the stubborn defiance of a woman who had lived through too much to be intimidated easily. When Calloway stepped closer, finger jabbing the air near her face, Michael nearly broke cover. But Mrs. Whitman didn't flinch. Eventually, the officers retreated to their vehicle. They didn't leave. The cruiser remained parked at the curb, both men watching the Hayes house with predatory intensity. They were waiting for something, or someone. At 4:30 p.m., with the officers still watching, Michael enacted the next stage of his plan. A call was placed to the precinct from a burner phone, reporting a disturbance across town, at an address that happened to fall within Calloway and Miller's patrol zone. Michael observed as the radio call came through. He watched Calloway's obvious reluctance to respond, noted how Miller gestured angrily toward the Hayes house before finally putting the cruiser in drive. The moment they were out of sight, Michael moved. He entered his home through the rear, confirmed all cameras were operational, and prepared for their return. It wouldn't be long. They would quickly determine the call was false and double back, likely more agitated than before. Sure enough, 43 minutes later, the cruiser screeched to a halt in front of the house. This time, there was no pretense of a routine patrol. Calloway and Miller approached the front door with the purposeful stride of men intent on confrontation. Michael positioned himself in the living room, ostensibly reading a book, The Picture of Innocence. The hidden cameras recorded every angle. Miller banged on the door with unnecessary force. Michael opened it with measured calm. "Officers, how can I help you?" Miller's face was flushed with barely suppressed rage. "We need to ask you some questions, Hayes." "Of course." Michael stepped back, allowing them entry. "What seems to be the problem?" Calloway closed the door behind them, a subtle but unmistakable power move designed to create a sense of isolation. We've received reports of threatening behavior, Hayes, specifically threats made against police officers. Is that so? Michael kept his composure, his military training allowing him to project an air of relaxed confidence, despite the tension crackling in the room. That sounds serious. Cut the innocent act, Miller snapped, advancing into the living room and deliberately invading Michael's personal space. You think we don't know what you're playing at? Following us. Intimidating officers. Calloway spoke first, his tone neutral but probing. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Michael replied mildly, noting the way Miller's hand hovered near his service weapon. I've been rather preoccupied, caring for my traumatized daughter. The same daughter who threatened us? Calloway asked, his voice deceptively soft. The one who said her daddy would make us pay? Michael's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. A darkness, a warning. My daughter was distraught after watching her dog die in her arms, he said. I wouldn't put too much stock in anything she said in that moment. Miller stepped closer, his body language turning overtly aggressive. Where is she now? Not here, Michael said simply. Convenient, Calloway muttered, wandering further into the house. He began inspecting framed photographs on the wall with exaggerated interest. Nice place. Seems like a lot of house for a guy raising a kid alone. Military pay that good these days? Michael recognized the tactic. Provoke a reaction, justify escalation. He didn't take the bait. I've been fortunate in my career, he said. Miller circled behind him, a flanking move subtle to the untrained, but not to Michael. You know we've been looking into you, Hayes. Delta Force, right? A lot of classified missions, a lot of violence. Makes a man unstable, doesn't it? PTSD, anger issues. I'm in excellent mental health, thank you, Michael replied, adjusting his stance to keep both officers in his peripheral vision. My military record is exemplary. Yeah, well, Calloway said, picking up a framed photo of Sophia and Max. Sometimes the most dangerous ones seem perfectly normal on the surface. He held up the photo with mock sympathy. Shame about the dog, but you military types understand collateral damage, right? The deliberate cruelty in the statement was designed to break Michael's control. A muscle twitched in his jaw, but he didn't rise to it. I understand the difference between necessary force and abuse of power, if that's what you're asking. Miller moved suddenly, knocking the book from Michael's hands. You threatening us, Hayes? Not at all, Michael said calmly, bending to retrieve the book. I'm simply having a conversation with two officers who entered my home. With your permission, Calloway added. You invited us in? So I did, Michael acknowledged, though I'm beginning to question the wisdom of that decision. That was when Miller's patience snapped. He grabbed Michael by the shoulder and spun him around. Listen, you arrogant son of a... Michael moved with controlled precision, breaking the hold with a simple redirection that sent Miller stumbling back a step. Please don't put your hands on me, officer. Or what? Miller's face contorted with rage. You'll attack a police officer? Give me a reason, Hayes. Just one reason. I think you should leave now, Michael said evenly. If you have further questions, you can direct them to my attorney. Calloway stepped forward, expression calculating. Your daughter made a serious accusation, Hayes. Said you'd make us pay. Now you're following us, confronting Officer Calloway in a parking lot, making veiled threats. I haven't threatened anyone, Michael corrected, and I certainly haven't been following you. Liar! Miller lunged forward, grabbing Michael's collar with both hands and shoving him against the wall. You think you can intimidate us? You think that fancy military training makes you untouchable? Michael could have disabled Miller in at least 7 different ways from that position, but he didn't. He held back, deliberately. I'm not resisting, he said clearly, aware of the hidden cameras recording every angle. I'm unarmed. And I'm not threatening you in any way. Please remove your hands. Shut up, Miller snarled, slamming him against the wall again, this time hard enough to rattle the picture frames. You think you're better than us? Think you can come into our town with your kind and tell us how to do our jobs? Calloway stood by, making no move to restrain his partner. You should have taught your daughter better manners, Hayes, he said coldly. Kids need to learn respect for authority. Michael's voice was steady. Respect is earned, and authority without accountability is just tyranny. That was the final straw. Miller's fist slammed into Michael's midsection, driving the air from his lungs. That's for threatening Michael doubled over, not fainting, but close. The pain was sharp. Miller was strong, his rage lending weight to the blow. I haven't threatened anyone, Michael gasped. Oh no! Miller grabbed him by the hair, yanking his head up. What do you call what happened in that parking lot? What do you call following us on patrol? What about that bogus call that sent us across town? Michael said nothing, letting Miller's words hang in the air, self-incriminating, and now on record. Finally, Calloway stepped forward, placing a hand on his partner's shoulder. That's enough, Miller. The hell it is, Miller snapped, slamming another punch into Michael's ribs. He needs to understand how things work around here. And you, Michael said, straightening despite the pain, need to understand that actions have consequences. Something in his tone, the calm certainty, cut through Miller's fury. He hesitated, a flicker of awareness dawning. The atmosphere in the room had changed. Is that a threat? Miller asked. No, Michael replied. It's a fact. Calloway's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering across his face. You wanted this, he said slowly. You provoked us into coming here. Michael's silence was confirmation enough. Miller paled as realization struck. You son of a... I think we're done here, Michael interrupted, voice perfectly level. Unless you'd like to continue assaulting an unarmed civilian in his own home. Maybe add a few more charges to the growing list? What charges? Calloway demanded, though for the first time his confidence wavered. Your word against ours, 2 decorated officers against, what? An unstable veteran with a grudge? Michael smiled, just a slight upturn of the lips that never reached his eyes. Interesting theory, I suppose we'll see how it plays out. Miller grabbed his partner's arm. Let's go, now. As they moved toward the door, Michael spoke one last time. Officers, next time you decide to terrorize a child or kill a beloved pet, you might want to check who that child's father is first. The door slammed behind them hard enough to rattle the windows. Michael waited until the sound of their cruiser faded, then moved to his computer. The footage was perfect, crisp, clear audio and video from multiple angles, capturing every moment, every blow, every damning word. With methodical precision, he made copies, backups, redundancies. Then he sent the first file to Jasmine with a simple message. It's done. Across town, Officer Miller sat in O'Mal's pub, downing his 4th whiskey in less than an hour. His hands trembled as he reached for the glass, the afternoon playing on loop in his mind with nauseating clarity. He had assaulted a civilian on camera. Hayes had been too calm, too accepting. He'd been recording everything. You're drinking too much, Calloway said, sliding onto the adjacent bar stool. He looked composed, but the tightness around his eyes betrayed the strain. We need to think clearly right now. We're screwed, Miller muttered, signaling for another drink. Did you see his face? He planned the whole thing. Keep your voice down, Calloway hissed, scanning the bar. Nothing's happened yet. He's bluffing, is he? Miller laughed bitterly. You read his file. The man's taken down warlords and terrorist cells. You think he can't handle us? He assaulted me first. In the parking lot. We can file charges. With what evidence? Miller snapped. Your word against a war hero whose daughter's dog got shot? Face it. We stepped in it this time. Calloway's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his face drained of colour. It's the captain. Wants us in her office. When? Now. Did she say why? Miller asked, though he already knew. She didn't have to. Calloway stood, throwing cash on the bar. Sober up. This isn't over. Neither man noticed the nondescript sedan parked across the street, nor the man inside, documenting their every move. Michael Hayes had spent years hunting prey far more dangerous than these two. He knew patience was the deadliest weapon in his arsenal. The trap had been set, the bait taken. Now it was just a matter of watching them unravel. Back at the Hayes residence, Jasmine sat at her brother's desk, reviewing the footage. Her professional composure cracked as she watched Miller slam Michael against the wall. Michael, this is explosive, she whispered. They basically admitted to targeting you and Sophia, to making a false report, to the bogus call that justified stopping Sophia in the first place. I know, Michael said quietly, pressing ice to the darkening bruise on his ribs. Will it be enough for criminal charges? Maybe, but for a civil suit? Absolutely. Jasmine looked up at him, her face tight with concern. You let him hurt you. You could have defended yourself. I needed authenticity, Michael said simply. Controlled escalation. If I'd fought back, they could have claimed self-defense. This is still a risky strategy, Jasmine warned. The blue wall of silence is real. They protect their own. Not when protecting their own becomes too costly. Michael checked his watch. What time will Sophia be back? My colleague's bringing her home for dinner. How much does she know about what you're... Michael's expression softened at the mention of his daughter. It wasn't a specific change, just a shift, something faint but telling. "She's perceptive," he said quietly. "She asked if I was going to hurt them." "And what did you tell her?" Jasmine pressed, her voice steady but laced with concern. "That I wanted justice," Michael replied, moving toward the window. He stared out at the darkening street, his tone distant. "I just didn't specify what form that justice would take." Jasmine studied her brother's profile, reading the careful calculation behind his calm demeanor. "There's something you're not telling me, isn't there?" she asked. "This isn't just about recording them assaulting you. There's more to your plan." Michael turned back to her, his expression unreadable. "There's always more, Jazz. You know that." Before she could press further, his phone buzzed with an incoming message. Michael checked it, a sense of satisfaction settling over his features. "It begins," he murmured. At precisely 9:15 the following morning, Michael opened the door to find two unfamiliar individuals on his porch, a woman in a crisp pantsuit and a man with a clipboard and government-issued identification. "Commander Hayes?" The woman extended her hand. "I'm Diane Mercer with the Department of Child and Family Services. This is my colleague, Anthony Wells. We need to speak with you regarding your daughter, Sophia." Michael's expression remained neutral, but inwardly a cold realization settled over him. Retaliation, swift and calculated. "Of course," he said, stepping aside to allow them entry. "May I ask what this is regarding?" "We've received a report expressing concern about Sophia's well-being," Ms. Mercer explained as they settled in the living room, the same room where Miller and Calloway had assaulted Michael less than 24 hours earlier. "Standard procedure requires us to investigate any such reports, particularly when they involve allegations of an unstable home environment." "I see." Michael's voice remained calm, though his military instincts immediately kicked in. He was assessing threats, calculating responses. "And who filed this report?" "I'm not at liberty to disclose that information," Ms. Mercer replied. Her glance at Wells was subtle, but it spoke volumes. "The report suggests concerns about your mental health, Commander Hayes, specifically allegations of PTSD-related aggression and potentially endangering your daughter through pursuing a personal vendetta against local law enforcement." So they had moved quickly, attempting to use the system against him, just as he had used it against them. Predictable, but effective. Michael had anticipated many responses from Calloway and Miller, but he hadn't expected them to target his relationship with Sophia quite so directly. "My daughter is currently at school," Michael stated, his voice unwavering. "She's been attending regularly except for one mental health day following the traumatic incident with her service dog. Her therapist, Dr. Bennett, can verify her psychological state and our ongoing work to address her trauma." Wells made notes on his clipboard, but Ms. Mercer was unyielding. "We'll need to speak with Sophia directly, as well as review her school records and medical history. We'll also require an evaluation of the home environment." "I understand procedure," Michael said evenly. "However, given the timing of this report, I believe it constitutes harassment and retaliation by officers Calloway and Miller, who are currently under investigation themselves for misconduct. My attorney should be present for any further discussion." Ms. Mercer's expression tightened, her eyes hardening. "Commander Hayes, obstruction of a DCFS investigation can result in the immediate temporary removal of the child from the home." The threat hung in the air like smoke, intentional, heavy. Michael had faced down warlords and terrorists with less calculation in their eyes than Ms. Mercer displayed now. The system, it seemed, was circling its wagons. "I'm not obstructing anything," Michael replied evenly. "I'm requesting appropriate legal representation, which is my right. Additionally, I'm documenting this visit and your threats regarding my daughter's custody, as they appear to be directly connected to my filing of misconduct charges against officers Calloway and Miller." Wells shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but Ms. Mercer remained composed. "We're simply following protocol based on a credible report." "Then you won't mind if I record our conversation for my attorney?" Michael said, placing his phone on the coffee table between them for transparency. The visit concluded 20 minutes later with a scheduled follow-up interview that would include Sophia, Dr. Bennett, and Michael's attorney. As their car pulled away, Michael immediately called Jasmine. "They're going after Sophia," he said, his voice tight with restrained fury. "DCFS just left. They're threatening a custody evaluation based on a credible report about my mental stability." Jasmine's sharp intake of breath was followed by a flurry of legal terms outlining exactly how problematic this was. "This is textbook retaliation," she said, "but it's effective. Family court operates under different standards of evidence than criminal court. The best interest of the child standard means they could potentially remove Sophia pending investigation, even without concrete evidence of abuse or neglect." "They won't take my daughter," Michael said, his voice steady but carrying a storm beneath it. Jasmine's tone held a warning note. "Whatever you're thinking, stop. This is exactly what they want, to provoke you into something that would justify their claims. We need to handle this properly, through the legal system. The same legal system that cleared them of killing Max, the same system they're now using to threaten my family." Michael's control slipped just slightly. "This isn't collateral damage, Jazz. This is my daughter." Before Jasmine could respond, Michael's phone beeped with another call. Sophia's school. His stomach tightened as he switched over. "Hayes, Commander Hayes, this is Principal Whitaker. I need you to come to the school immediately. There's been an incident involving Sophia." Michael arrived at Riverview Elementary in record time. He rushed into the administrative offices to find Sophia sitting outside the principal's office, her small frame curled inward, her eyes fixed on the floor. She looked up as he approached, and the fear in her expression cut through him like a blade. "Daddy," she whispered, rising to throw her arms around his waist. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause trouble." Michael knelt to her level, noticing the tear tracks on her cheeks and the slight tremor in her hands. "What happened, sweetheart?" Before she could answer, Principal Whitaker appeared in the doorway. "Commander Hayes, please come in. Sophia, you wait here." Inside the office, Michael found Dr. Bennett already present, along with the school counselor. Principal Whitaker, a stern woman in her 50s, gestured for him to enter. "Sit, Commander Hayes." The tone in Principal Whitaker's voice was serious, her expression grave. Michael felt his stomach tighten. This was not a good start. "We had a concerning situation today," she continued. "Officers Calloway and Miller arrived at the school this morning, requesting to speak with Sophia regarding an ongoing investigation. They claim to have proper authorization." Michael's blood ran cold. "They what?" he asked, the words slipping out before he could stop them. "Fortunately," Whitaker continued, "our policy requires parental notification before any student is interviewed by law enforcement. When I called to inform you, the officers became insistent. Sophia overheard the confrontation and experienced what Dr. Bennett believes was a panic attack." Dr. Bennett nodded grimly, confirming the doctor's assessment. Sophia displayed classic symptoms of acute anxiety, triggered by the officer's presence. "She was hiding under a desk in the library when they found her," Dr. Bennett added. According to the librarian, when Officer Miller approached, Sophia began screaming. Michael's hand tightened on the arm of his chair. "Where are they now?" he asked, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "After I insisted they leave school property, they complied, though reluctantly," Principal Whitaker replied. "However, they indicated they would return with proper documentation to interview Sophia regarding threats allegedly made against them." Michael's voice was flat, the words coming out like ice. "This is harassment. They're retaliating because I filed formal complaints about their conduct in shooting Sophia's service animal and their subsequent behavior." Principal Whitaker's expression softened slightly. "Commander Hayes, I'm aware of what happened to Max. The entire staff has been briefed on Sophia's situation and her current emotional vulnerability. I assure you we did not and would not allow those officers access to your daughter without your explicit permission." "Thank you," Michael said, though the words felt inadequate against the tidal wave of rage building within him. "May I take Sophia home now?" "Of course. Dr. Bennett has recommended she take the rest of the week off. The school counselor will coordinate with her teachers to ensure she doesn't fall behind." When they emerged from the office, Sophia was exactly where they'd left her, small, withdrawn, and curled up in the oversized chair. She looked up at Michael, her eyes wide, as if asking a question she was afraid to voice. "We're going home, sweetheart," he said gently, extending his hand to her. In the car, the silence between them felt thick with unspoken words. Finally, as they turned onto their street, Sophia spoke, her voice tentative. "They said they were going to take me away from you." Michael's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Who said that?" "So, Sophia and the policeman," she said, voice wavering. "They were talking outside the principal's office. They didn't know I could hear them. Officer Miller said if you wouldn't back off, they'd make sure I went into foster care." He said no judge would let a mentally unstable veteran keep custody. The calculated cruelty of using a child's greatest fear, separation from her remaining parent, ignited something primitive in Michael. But when he spoke, his voice remained gentle. "Sophia, look at me." She turned to him, her eyes filled with the kind of fear no child should know. "No one is taking you away from me," he promised, his tone unwavering. "Those men are trying to scare us because they did something wrong, and they don't want to face the consequences. But that's not how the world should work, is it?" Sophia shook her head slowly. "Your mother used to say that doing what's right isn't always easy, but it's always necessary," Michael said quietly, recalling her words. "Do you remember that?" A ghost of a smile touched Sophia's lips. "She said it when I didn't want to tell you I broke your fishing rod," she murmured. "That's right," Michael said, squeezing her hand gently. "We're going to get through this together, Sophia. I promise you that." As they pulled into the driveway, Michael noticed an unmarked police cruiser parked down the street. They were watching, waiting for him to make a mistake, anything that would give them the ammunition they needed to separate him from his daughter. In that moment, Michael Hayes, the decorated Delta Force operative, veteran of countless classified missions, faced the most difficult tactical decision of his career: continue his campaign against Calloway and Miller, potentially risking his custody of Sophia, or back down, allowing the corrupt officers to escape the consequences once again. The choice crystallized as Sophia's small hand slipped into his, seeking reassurance he'd never failed to provide. Some battles couldn't be won through direct confrontation. Some required a different approach entirely. The following morning, a heavy envelope arrived by courier. Michael examined the official police department seal before carefully opening it, half expecting formal charges or a restraining order. Instead, he found a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note: "Parking garage, level 3, noon today, come alone." The signature was simply Richard. Captain Eleanor Richardson had been with the department for 27 years, rising through the ranks in an era when female officers, particularly black female officers, faced obstacles at every turn. Michael had researched her thoroughly as part of his intelligence gathering. Her record was impeccable, her reputation for integrity unquestioned, even by those who disagreed with her management style. Why she would request a clandestine meeting rather than an official interview was concerning. Nevertheless, Michael arranged for Sophia to spend the day with Jasmine and headed downtown. The parking garage was nearly empty at midday. Michael spotted the solitary figure of Captain Richardson, leaning against a concrete pillar, dressed in civilian clothes rather than her uniform. Her greying hair was pulled back in a severe bun, her posture military straight. "Commander Hayes," she acknowledged as he approached. "Thank you for coming, Captain," Michael said, maintaining a cautious distance. "I must admit I'm curious about the cloak and dagger approach," he added, trying to lighten the mood. Her expression remained neutral. "The walls in my department have ears, Commander," she replied. "What I need to discuss with you isn't for public consumption." She glanced around the empty parking level before continuing. "I've been reviewing the complaints against Officers Calloway and Miller, including yours, and the footage you provided." Michael kept his tone neutral, his gaze unwavering. "I've been assessing the situation, and I believe you're being set up." Richardson's directness took Michael by surprise. He'd expected caution, or at least a little diplomacy. Instead, her words were sharp, cutting through the tension in the air. "The department received an anonymous tip 3 weeks ago, claiming you were planning to harass my officers," she continued. "Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? Before you'd even filed your first complaint." Michael's tactical mind clicked into high gear. They anticipated my response to Max's shooting, he thought, piecing it together. They were laying the groundwork. Richardson handed him a thin file. "This isn't the first time," she said, her voice hardening. "Over the past 18 months, there have been 7 incidents involving black military families in Oak Ridge. 3 of them involved service animals, all handled by Calloway and Miller." Michael paged through the documentation, recognizing the pattern immediately. "Or why?" he muttered under his breath. He saw the connections, the confrontations that escalated quickly, the excessive force justified by claims of aggression or resistance. His mind raced. "Why are you showing me this?" he asked, already suspecting the answer. Richardson's gaze was unwavering. "Because I've been building a case against them for nearly a year, and they know it." Michael's pulse quickened. This was bigger than he'd realized. "The department is divided, Commander," Richardson added, leaving the implication hanging in the air. including whoever authorized the officers to approach my daughter at school. Michael's mind processed the new information, recalibrating the whole situation. So I'm not just dealing with two corrupt officers. There's a faction within the department protecting them and actively working to discredit me. Richardson confirmed the worst. The report to Child Services didn't come from Calloway or Miller directly. It came from Pearson, which gives it more credibility. Her voice was low but hard. They're trying to paint you as an unstable veteran on a vendetta, using your military background against you. Michael's stomach churned. The stakes were higher than he'd ever anticipated. "Why are you helping me?" he asked, his voice blunt. "This could cost you your career." Richardson fell silent for a moment, her eyes distant. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, but still full of resolve. "My son was a Marine, Afghanistan, 2010. He came home with a service dog named Apollo." She paused, the weight of her words sinking in. 3 years ago, he was pulled over by a deputy in the next county. Apollo barked when the deputy approached aggressively. The deputy shot Apollo and then my son when he made a threatening movement. Richardson's gaze darkened, hardened by years of grief and frustration. No charges were filed. The shared pain between them hung thick in the air. Michael nodded, understanding all too well. "I'm sorry," he said simply. Richardson straightened, professionalism reasserting itself. "I'm not telling you this for sympathy, Commander. I'm telling you because you need to understand what you're up against. These men believe they're untouchable. They've built a system of protection around themselves that extends beyond the department." Michael's mind raced. "What do you suggest?" he asked, his voice measured. Richardson's eyes flicked to the side, her expression hardening. "Be careful. They're escalating because they're afraid. The footage you provided has them cornered, and cornered animals are dangerous." She handed him another document. This one heavier, more significant. "This is a copy of a directive sent this morning. All officers have been instructed to consider you armed and dangerous if encountered during patrol." Michael's mind locked into place as the full scope of their tactics became clear. "Setting me up for a confrontation?" he observed grimly. "Exactly." Richardson's eyes flicked over her shoulder to check the empty parking garage. "There's something else you should know." Michael raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "Officer Calloway isn't just some random corrupt cop with a badge." Richardson's voice dropped an octave, the weight of her words heavier than before. "He served under you in Afghanistan, 2008. The revelation hit Michael like a physical blow. His mind rapidly sorted through memories of the men who had served under his command, landing on a face, young, less weathered, but unmistakably Calloway. Staff Sergeant James Calloway, Echo Team. The memory was sharp, bitter. Richardson nodded, confirming the terrible truth. Dishonorably discharged after an incident involving excessive force against civilians. You filed the report that ended his military career. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Calloway hadn't just randomly stopped Sophia that day. He recognized the Hayes name, Michael said slowly. He deliberately targeted the daughter of the man who destroyed his military career. Richardson's expression hardened. "This isn't just about a black family moving into a white neighborhood, Michael. This was personal from the beginning." Michael's eyes narrowed, fury bubbling under his calm. "Appears so," Richardson confirmed, "which makes him even more dangerous. This isn't just about avoiding accountability now, it's about revenge." Just then, Michael's phone buzzed with a text from Officer Parker. "They know I've been talking to you. Pearson just put me on administrative leave. They're planning something tonight." Richardson read the message over his shoulder, her jaw tightening. "Thomas Parker, good kid. One of the few who came to me with concerns about Calloway and Miller's conduct. He witnessed Max's shooting." She paused, a grim expression crossing her face. "His conscience has been eating at him." Michael's eyes darkened. "They'll destroy him for breaking ranks." Richardson's voice was thick with bitterness. "The thin blue line doesn't tolerate perceived betrayal." Michael's tactical mind was already formulating a new strategy. "Captain, I need to know, are you officially investigating Calloway and Miller?" Richardson's gaze was resolute. "Yes, but it's complicated by department politics and the brotherhood mentality. Evidence keeps disappearing. Witnesses change their stories. Internal affairs drags their feet." She exhaled sharply. "Your footage is the most damning evidence I've seen, but even that might not be enough without corroboration." Michael's eyes hardened as he looked at her. "What if I told you I have more?" Richardson raised an eyebrow, her attention sharp. More? Carefully documented patterns of harassment, Michael said quietly. Testimony from other victims, evidence of coordinated efforts to intimidate. Richardson didn't flinch, she simply nodded. Then we fight back. Richardson's eyes narrowed. That would change things significantly. But obtaining such evidence would require resources and training that most civilians don't have. Michael finished the thought for her. Fortunately, I'm not most civilians. A ghost of a smile touched Richardson's lips. No, Commander, you certainly are not. She straightened, her decision made. I can offer you limited protection, but it has to be unofficial. If Pearson or the others suspect I'm working with you. I understand, Michael interrupted, his voice steady. I don't need protection. I need an ally inside the department who can move when the time is right. Richardson's eyes met his, firm and resolute. You'll have that, she promised. But Commander Hayes, Michael, be careful. These men aren't just coming after you anymore. They're coming after your daughter. Don't let your desire for justice blind you to what matters most. As they parted ways, Michael's phone buzzed once again. This time, it was Jasmine. Just got a call from Detective Wilson. Claims he's investigating credible threats you made against Calloway and Miller. Wants Sophia to come in for questioning as a material witness. She paused. I shut it down, but they're not backing off. The tension in Michael's gut tightened. He was ready for whatever they were about to throw at him. But the final revelation came that evening as he reviewed his security footage from the past 3 weeks. In the background of several clips, Michael noticed something. An unmarked car. It had appeared multiple times, lurking in the shadows, always watching. In one clear frame, as the vehicle turned beneath a streetlight, Michael could see the driver's face, Lieutenant Gregory Pearson. But it was the passenger that made his blood run cold. A man he recognized from countless intelligence briefings, Victor Decker, a former military contractor, now running a private security firm with suspected ties to domestic extremist groups. The connection crystallized with terrifying clarity. This wasn't just about Calloway's personal vendetta or protecting corrupt officers. There was a larger pattern at work. A systematic intimidation campaign targeting military families, especially minorities, moving into Oak Ridge. Michael's phone rang, and the name on the screen was Captain Richardson. They've been systematically targeting military families of color moving into Oak Ridge, she said, without preamble. I just found documentation linking Pearson, Calloway, and 3 other officers to a private community protection group they call themselves the Neighborhood Integrity Coalition. Michael's response was simple but heavy. I know, I just identified their private security consultant, Victor Decker, former Blackwater, suspected ties to white nationalist groups. Richardson's sharp intake of breath was audible. This just went from a corrupt cops investigation to something much bigger and much more dangerous. Michael's agreement was silent, but his resolve firmed. As he sat in the living room, watching Sophia sleep peacefully on the couch, exhausted from the emotional toll of recent days, he knew the stakes had escalated beyond anything he had anticipated. Captain, I think it's time we changed our approach, he said quietly, almost to himself. By 8 a.m. sharp, the evidence package landed on the desk of FBI Special Agent Marissa Cohen, hand-delivered by Captain Richardson herself. By noon, a joint task force of FBI agents and state police investigators had descended on the Oak Ridge Police Department, executing search warrants with methodical precision. Lieutenant Gregory Pearson was escorted from the building in handcuffs, his face ashen with shock. Similar scenes unfolded at the homes of officers Calloway and Miller, as well as at the modest office suite housing the Neighborhood Integrity Coalition. Michael watched the news coverage from his living room, Sophia curled against his side. Her small hand grasped his, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on them. The local news anchor could barely contain her excitement as she reported on the unfolding story. In a stunning development, the anchor announced, federal authorities have arrested 7 current Oak Ridge police officers and civilians in connection with what investigators are calling a systematic campaign of intimidation and harassment targeting minority families moving into the affluent suburb. Michael barely registered his own name mentioned, only in passing, as the father of a child whose service animal was shot by officers currently under investigation. His focus was on the bigger picture now, on what was still yet to come. Jasmine arrived during the broadcast, her expression a mixture of professional satisfaction and personal relief. "Federal charges," she said, settling into an armchair. "Civil rights violations, conspiracy, evidence tampering, witness intimidation. They're not walking away from this." Michael exhaled slowly, a heavy weight lifting from his shoulders, but not entirely. He wasn't done yet. "What about the DCF's investigation?" he asked quietly, mindful of Sophia listening closely. "Is that still going?" Jasmine's disgust was evident. "Robbed completely. The caseworker who came here, Diane Mercer, turns out she's Pearson's cousin. The whole thing was fabricated from the start." She paused, a dark look crossing her face. "There's already talk of a separate investigation into abuse of power within social services." Michael nodded, processing the information with the careful assessment of a strategist. This operation had succeeded beyond his initial expectations, but the war was far from over. The wheels of justice were turning, but there was more work to do. "We stay vigilant," Michael said quietly, his eyes on Sophia, who was drifting off to sleep beside him. "We stay one step ahead." The battle for Oak Ridge and for his daughter's safety was far from over. What had begun as a quest for justice for Max and Tom, Sophia had uncovered something far more insidious, a coordinated effort to maintain Oak Ridge's demographic homogeneity through systematic intimidation. "There's more," Jasmine added, her voice lowering slightly. The FBI found evidence linking Decker and the NIC to similar initiatives in 3 other communities across the state. "This isn't just about Calloway's vendetta against you. It's bigger." Michael nodded, his expression somber but resolute. "I know." The preliminary hearing was held 2 weeks later. Michael sat in the crowded courtroom, his eyes fixed on the 2 men who had been at the heart of the storm. Calloway and Miller were led in, shackled and wearing orange jumpsuits, their expressions defiant despite the gravity of their situation. Beside him, Officer Parker fidgeted nervously, awaiting his turn to testify. Captain Richardson sat stone-faced in the front row, her posture rigid, the accumulated tension of a year-long covert investigation finally coming to fruition. When Calloway's eyes met Michael's across the courtroom, there was no mistaking the hatred that flashed between them. Hatred that had led him to target Sophia, using a child's trauma as a weapon in his pursuit of revenge. Miller, by contrast, seemed smaller, deflated by the realization of consequences he had never truly believed would come. The evidence presented was overwhelming. The prosecution methodically laid out the pattern of harassment, the falsified reports, the coordinated efforts to intimidate families, and the pressure placed on them to leave Oak Ridge. The footage of Calloway and Miller assaulting Michael in his own home played on screens throughout the courtroom. Their own words damned them beyond any possible defense. When it was over, when the judge denied bail and remanded all defendants to custody pending trial, Michael felt no triumph, no satisfaction, only a quiet sense of rightness, balance restored. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. Captain Richardson handled the official responses with her usual professionalism, never wavering. Michael declined all interview requests, choosing instead to return home, where Sophia waited with her aunt. 3 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, much like the day Max had been killed, Michael and Sophia stood outside the Oak Ridge Animal Shelter. Sophia's hand trembled slightly in his as they approached the entrance. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Michael asked gently. "There's no rush." Sophia nodded, though uncertainty lingered in her eyes. "Doctor Bennett says it might help," she said, her voice tentative, "and I think Max would want me to be happy again." Inside the shelter, the manager led them to a quiet room where a small, mixed-breed puppy waited. Her golden-brown coat shone under the fluorescent lights. Unlike Max's trained discipline, this dog was all puppy energy, bouncing excitedly as they entered. "She's named Stella," the manager explained. "She was found abandoned on the side of the highway about a month ago. The vet estimates she's about 5 months old." Sophia knelt slowly, allowing the puppy to approach at her own pace. When Stella licked her hand, the ghost of a smile touched Sophia's lips, the first genuine smile Michael had seen since the day they lost Max. "She's not a replacement," Michael said softly, kneeling beside his daughter. "Nothing could ever replace Max." "I know, Daddy," Sophia responded, looking up at him, something resolute forming in her expression. "But maybe she needs us as much as we need her." As they completed the adoption paperwork, Michael's phone buzzed with a text from Captain Richardson. Jury selection starts Monday. Prosecutor says it's the strongest case she's ever taken to trial. On the drive home, with Stella contentedly settled in Sophia's lap, Michael caught his daughter's eye in the rearview mirror. "You know your mother would be proud of you," he said softly, "the way you've handled everything." Sophia hesitated, her voice small. Do you think she'd be mad that we got a new dog? That we're not just remembering Max?" Michael considered his answer carefully. "I think your mother understood something important about love, Sophia. She used to say that love isn't like a cup with only so much to go around. It's more like a light. Sharing it with someone new doesn't make it any dimmer for others." Sophia pondered this, absently stroking Stella's ears. "So loving Stella doesn't mean I love Max any less." "Exactly," Michael confirmed. "And remembering him, honoring what he meant to you, that's a way of keeping him with us, but moving forward, finding joy again, that honors him too." As they pulled into the driveway of their home, Mrs. Whitman waved from her porch. "Is that a new pup I see?" she called cheerfully. Sophia climbed out of the car, carefully holding Stella in her arms. "Her name is Stella," she announced, her voice stronger than it had been in months. "Well, she's beautiful," Mrs. Whitman declared, crossing the street to meet them. "And it does my old heart good to see you smiling again, child." That evening, as Sophia slept with Stella curled at the foot of her bed, no longer in Max's old bed, but in a new one they had chosen together, Michael sat on the porch swing, gazing up at the stars. His daughter had once been so fascinated by them. The path to justice had not been what he'd initially envisioned. It had required restraint when all he'd wanted was retribution. But watching Sophia begin to heal, seeing the quiet return of her resilience, he knew he had made the right choice. True justice wasn't just about punishment for those who had done wrong. It was about healing, rebuilding, and moving forward. It wasn't just about punishment. It was about the restoration of safety, of trust, and the ability to move forward. For the first time since Max's death, Michael allowed himself to believe that such restoration was possible, not just for his daughter, but for himself as well. In the quiet moments, as Michael watched Sophia begin to heal, and the shadows of grief slowly began to lift, he found a glimmer of peace he hadn't thought he would ever feel again. The journey had been long and painful, but it had brought him closer to the daughter he was determined to protect, to rebuild a future with her. It wasn't just about vengeance anymore. It was about reclaiming what had been stolen from them, what they had almost lost forever. The trial had been a turning point, but it wasn't the end. The true work was in the aftermath, the small, quiet victories. The bond between father and daughter, once shattered by tragedy, had grown stronger. They had endured, survived, and found a way to rebuild the trust that had been broken by violence and betrayal. It was a process, one that would take time, but it was possible now. The weight of their pain was still there, but it was no longer a burden that defined their lives. As Michael and Sophia walked forward, side by side, the future no longer seemed as uncertain. They had taken back control of their story, and while the scars would remain, they no longer marked them as victims, they were survivors. And in that survival, there was hope. Hope that even in the darkest moments, healing could begin. Hope that justice, though imperfect, could still be restored. Michael had seen it in the courtroom, and now, in the quiet of their home, he could feel it too. Their journey had led them here, back to each other, back to a future filled with possibility. The story of Commander Michael Hayes and his daughter Sophia had come full circle. They had fought not just for justice, but for the restoration of their lives. For Michael, it was more than clearing his name or bringing those responsible to justice. It was about the deep, painful healing taking place within their family. The court case had brought the criminals to justice, but it was their own strength, their love for each other, that would see them through the rest of their lives. This was not the story of flawless heroes or an easy victory. This was the story of a father who faced unimaginable loss and, with the unwavering support of his daughter, found the courage to move forward. It was about persistence, about choosing the right battles, and about understanding that true justice heals rather than harms, builds rather than destroys. As Michael sat with Sophia on the porch, watching the stars together, he knew this chapter was over, but their journey was just beginning. They had fought for what was right, and they had found peace in the process. For the first time in a long while, Michael could see the future with hope in his heart, and as they walked through life together, facing whatever came next, Michael knew that the greatest legacy he could leave for Sophia was this: the belief that tomorrow could always be better than today. That even after the darkest days, there could be a brighter, stronger future ahead. In our twilight years, we've witnessed the evolving landscape of America, its triumphs and failures. We've seen promises of equality too often left unfulfilled, and systems that protect power more than they protect people. Commander Hayes' story reminds us that justice, though imperfect, remains possible when courage meets wisdom. Like many of our generation who fought battles both abroad and at home, Hayes understood that the greatest strength lies not in vengeance, but in principle, in persistence. His struggle echoes our own experiences with institutions that resist change, and the painful lessons we've learned about choosing our battles wisely. Yet his ultimate victory affirms what we've always known: love for our children, for our communities, for our ideals, sustains us through darkness. As we watch younger generations navigate these same waters, let us share this wisdom. True justice heals rather than harms, builds rather than destroys, and ultimately allows wounded hearts, like Sophia's, to find their way back to joy. This is our legacy to them, not perfect solutions, but the unshakable belief that tomorrow can be better than today. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and a comment below too. Let me know what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.